November. Gray sky, the last warmth draining out of the ground. I raked every leaf I could find onto bed number 5. Oak leaves, maple leaves, a few handfuls of grass clippings from the final mow of the year. It took about 20 minutes. When I finished, the bed looked like a small brown mattress. My neighbor walked past, looked at it, and asked if I was putting the garden to sleep. I said yes. I didn't mention that I had no idea if it would wake up. Winter was long. Every morning, I'd stand at the kitchen window with my coffee and look at those brown beds under their leaf blankets. Some mornings there was frost on top, and the leaves looked silver in the early light. I thought about going out and checking, peeling back a corner to see what was happening underneath. I didn't. Partly because I told myself to wait. Partly because I was afraid of what I'd find. I kept thinking about anaerobic decomposition, matted layers that block oxygen and breed mold instead of feeding the soil. I'd taught that process to 17-year-olds, drawn the diagrams, explained the chemistry. Now it was keeping me up at night. In January, after a heavy rain, I noticed the leaves had matted flat in places, dark and slick, and I nearly went out with a rake. I stood at the door in my socks, hand on the handle, and made myself turn around. The irony wasn't lost on me. A retired biology teacher, standing in his kitchen, afraid of decomposition. March came slowly. The ground was still cool when I finally walked out, knelt at the edge of bed 5, and peeled back the leaf layer like turning back a page in a book I wasn't sure I wanted to read. The soil underneath was dark. Not the pale, dusty clay I remembered from autumn. This was nearly black, with a faint smell like a forest path after rain. I pressed 2 fingers in. They sank with no resistance. Cool, moist, yielding. And then I saw movement. One earthworm, roughly the length of my index finger, pulling a small fragment of leaf into a burrow no wider than a pencil. I watched it grip the leaf edge, brace itself against the tunnel wall, and pull. The leaf didn't move. The worm adjusted, shifted its hold, pulled again. This time the leaf folded and slid partway into the hole. The worm backed down and returned for another fragment. I stayed for 20 minutes. My knees went numb against the cold March soil. My coffee sat on the porch rail, untouched, going cold in the morning air. I watched one worm have breakfast, and in those 20 minutes something shifted in the way I understood my own garden. For decades, I had drawn a diagram on the chalkboard, the soil food web. Neat arrows connecting bacteria to protozoa, protozoa to nematodes, nematodes to earthworms, earthworms to plant roots. It looked clean and logical on the board, like a circuit diagram. What I never explained to my students, because I didn't understand it myself, was what powers the whole thing. The answer was in front of me, half pulled into a worm burrow, a dead leaf. Every arrow on that poster begins with a leaf falling to the ground. Without that, the circuit has no current. I stood up, brushed the dirt off my knees, and walked to the fence at the back of my property. On the other side, forest. Nobody rakes there. Nobody digs. Nobody fertilizes. Nobody worries about anaerobic decomposition. Leaves fall in October, vanish by May. The soil under those trees is darker and softer than anything I've built in 5 years of trying. That forest has been running this process for roughly 400 million years. I looked at my mulched beds, then back at the forest floor, and the resemblance was embarrassing. It had taken me 6 months of anxiety to copy what the woods do without thinking. By June, the difference was clear. Every mulched bed was darker, softer, full of life. I found worms in all of them, not one at a time, but clusters. The beds I'd left bare over winter, the ones exposed to rain and frost with nothing on top, looked the same as always. Compacted, pale, quiet. Same rain fell on both. The mulched beds gave me roughly a third more salad greens, and noticeably more beans. I didn't weigh anything precisely. I'm growing dinner, not running a trial. but the gap was wide enough that I stopped leaving beds bare entirely. A wren landed on the fence post while I was checking the last bed. It sat there, tilted its head, and watched me the way I'd watched the worm, with a kind of patient curiosity, as if wondering what I was doing on its territory. That morning in March still comes back to me. Not the numbers, not the harvest, the worm, the slowness of it. Pulling one leaf at a time into the dark, building something it would never see completed. No urgency, no plan, no doubt. I spent 20 minutes watching, and I'm still learning from what I saw. How would those worms handle 3 different beds, 3 different methods, given one summer to choose? That's next.